Currency speculation is a very old profession. Daniel Delvia writes that the earliest known currency speculators in financial history were the publicani of ancient Rome, who engaged in currency contracts as early as the 2nd century BCE. In modern history, a first speculative attack on a currency was recorded in Britain, 1967, as the sterling came under siege. Who were the attackers? International currency speculators from New York and continental Europe, according to Barry Eichengreen. The international speculators anticipated a sterling devaluation due to Britain's worsening balance of payments and economic weakness. The result? Britain was forced to devalue sterling by 14% in 1967. This mild devaluation would not qualify as a currency crisis, as we shall see, but the template became well known to speculators, and currency attacks leading to sharper devaluations and currency crises multiplied. Why does this matter to you? Currency crises occur very often. Levin and Valencia identified 201 currency crises from 1975 to 2007. This is a very high number, an average of more than 5 currency crises per year. Are you ready for the next one? Let's examine the British devaluation in 1967, starting with the context. After World War II, Allied nations signed Bretton Woods, a monetary order where currencies were pegged to the US dollar, which was convertible to gold at $35 per ounce. The adjustable peg meant that exchange rates could only change if a country faced fundamental disequilibrium in its balance of payments, subject to IMF approval. In 1949, sterling was pegged at $2.8 per pound. In the 1950s, Britain recorded current account surpluses. Exports of goods and services exceeded imports. But this changed in the 1960s. Samuel Britton summarized the events. From 1960 to 1963, Britain showed a current account deficit each year. The Labour Party won the 1964 election and disclosed in a press conference that Britain's current account deficit for 1964 would be 20-fold higher than that in 1963. Still in 1964, the government attempted to remedy such deficits with import surcharges and export subsidies. Currency speculators took this as a sign of weakness, and the attack started. On November 23, 1964, the Bank of England raised interest rates to 7%. Next day, speculators in France and Germany replied with heavy sterling selling. The Bank of England lost £5 billion in today's money. Next day, November 25, a credit package from the US and the BIS worth $31 billion in today's money was announced, and speculators suspended their attacks. Another speculative attack occurred in June 1965, this time beaten off with aid from the US and the IMF. Yet another speculative attack was launched in August 1965. On September 10, 1965, at a pre-arranged time, the New York Fed and other central banks simultaneously placed massive sterling buy orders. The impact was stunning. Speculators were badly burned and central banks defending sterling recovered all losses of previous months. But it was not over. On July 14, 1966, the Bank of England raised interest rates. Next day was very bad for sterling, and devaluation was then discussed in a long cabinet meeting. In May 1967, Britain announced a rather bad set of trade statistics. The problem of current account deficits remained. The final blow was triggered in June 1967 with the Arab-Israeli War and the oil embargo that followed. The immediate effect was a flight from the pound and other currencies into the US dollar. The higher oil prices would hurt Britain's current account even more. On November 13, 1967, the governor of the bank attempted to arrange for an IMF loan. But next day, Britain announced its worst trade deficit on record. On November 16, the cabinet approved the devaluation. And thus, on November 18, the Labour government of Harold Wilson devalued sterling from $2.80 to $2.4, in a moderate 14% move. Did the 1967 devaluation impact Britain's trade balance as expected? Exports did rise in 1968 and 69, but unemployment also increased. But if the goal was to help restore Britain's competitiveness with a weaker currency, then the 1967 devaluation was not successful. In the not-too-distant future, sterling would come under attack again, this time following the 1973 oil crisis. Was the 1967 speculative attack on sterling the first one in history? It was not. The French franc behaved wildly in the 1920s. But we may state that the 1967 sterling devaluation was perhaps the first widely publicized case in the post-war period. After this, the cat was out of the bag. As noted, Levin and Valencia identified 201 currency crises from 1975 to 2007. They define a currency crisis as a nominal currency depreciation of at least 30%. Glick and Hutchison show that currency crises tend to clump. Note the surge of currency crises in the 1980s, with many cases in Latin America following its sovereign debt crisis, and in the 1990s, with many cases in Eastern Europe in the aftermath of the Soviet collapse. And then, of course, came the 2008 global financial crisis, causing a wave of currency crises worldwide. If you wonder how bad currency crises can be for your professional life or your savings, consider this. Glick and Hutchison show that currency crises tend to produce sharp recessions, averaging a 3% downturn in economic output. Another important question is, do currency crises occur in developing economies only? Graciela Kaminsky shows that currency crises can hit any economy, from the emerging market to the industrialized country. She also shows that currency crises come in different shapes and sizes. While some economies collapse following such a crisis, many others that also fall prey to speculative attacks do not suffer catastrophic consequences. Our verified sources are shown here. Write to us in the comments section if your interpretation is different, or if you'd like to suggest other sources. What are the takeaways for you? As we have seen, currency crises occur very often. Whereas the size of the damage varies, it is never positive. Glick and Hutchison explain that international financial institutions, central banks, and private investment banks have sought to develop early warning systems for currency crises. How well do these work? Glick and Hutchison explain that the consensus is that such systems do offer some value in providing early warning about which individual countries are most vulnerable to crisis. However, they also generate a lot of false alarms. What can you do as an individual investor? You can start by exercising geographic diversification if you can, and also by avoiding leverage. Both of these themes have been a recurring topic in our discussions. It is fair to assume that the next currency crisis will happen somewhere around the world at some point, and if your home country happens to be affected by it, you do not want to be caught off balance. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more financial history from verified sources, subscribe to our channel and join our community of individual investors who strive to learn from the misfortunes of others to avoid similar fates.